to transform their energy sectors. It's not a global promise, but the global promises are very hard to get to. And so I think we should look to incremental progress and not get hopelessly frustrated if we don't see what we want out of the central negotiations.
Samantha Gross, you're the director of the Energy Security and Climate Initiative at the Brookings Institution. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. Thank you. And managing partner of Blue Like an Orange Sustainable Capital. And thank you for being with us. That's all we have time for, unfortunately. Thanks to you for watching. If you like the show, you can watch all of our previous episodes on the France 24 app or website. You can also listen on the podcast platform of your choice. In the meantime, stay tuned to France 24.
Hello and welcome to People and Profit. I'm Kate Moody. From picket line to campaign trail, as we enter the final countdown to the 2024 U.S. presidential election, we're looking at what role labor unions have played in this race. The first recorded worker strike in the U.S. dates back to 1768. In more modern times, labor law has recognized American unions since 1935, allowing members to carry out collective bargaining for better wages and working conditions. Both Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump have been courting union support. The working class voters they tend to represent could prove crucial in several battleground states.
The bottom line is when unions are strong, America is strong. And our unions have always fought to make our nation then more equal, more fair, and more free.
We will end all taxes on overtime. Those are the people that really work. They're police officers, nurses, factory workers, construction workers, truck drivers, and machine operators. It's time for the working man and woman to finally catch a break.
We're joined now by Bob Bruno, professor of labor and employment relations at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, also author of the book What Work Is. Thank you for being on the show today. Tell us, what have we heard from the two candidates, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, in terms of their approach to unions?
Well, we've heard very stark differences. Donald Trump really has been very critical of union leaders, and he has on a number of occasions articulated really his opposition to things that unions stand for, like raising the minimum wage. He's also made clear that he favors right-to-work laws, which are very destructive of union organizing in the United States. On the other hand, Kamala Harris has actively sought that union vote. She has met with quite a few union leaders. She's given a number of rallies and talks at Union Hall. She's got the endorsements of most of the large unions. Something Donald Trump has really not attempted to do is really to win favor with many unions in the United States. And she's proposed policies that would be largely supportive of worker rights, like the PRO Act in the United States, but also other measures that would protect work and protect the right to organize. So the differences are very stark.
Let's talk a bit more about endorsements and the lack thereof. Donald Trump, as you mentioned, has received the backing of a few local and law enforcement unions. Kamala Harris has much more high-profile support from the likes of the United Auto Workers, United Steelworkers, National Teachers Unions. Those groups do traditionally back Democratic candidates. But the decision of the Teamsters not to endorse either candidate back in September arguably made even more headlines. Do these kind of endorsements really matter in a presidential race?
Those kinds of endorsements really do matter. Organized labor has lost a lot of its political clout, but even with reduced membership, it can still be a decider in national elections, particularly in many of the competitive states, those that are in the Midwest, where there is still a high percentage of unionization. So these endorsements are coveted, and they do have influence on the rank and file.
And briefly then, what do you make of the decision of the Teamsters specifically not to endorse Kamala Harris? And we saw the president of the Teamsters actually appearing at the Republican National Convention in support of Donald Trump.
Their rationale for not endorsing is something that seems really hard to accept and to understand, because the statement was that neither of the candidates would put working class interests ahead of corporate interests. While that's certainly true of Donald Trump, you could never make that argument that it was true of the Biden administration. And the president of the union, the Teamsters Union, has also gone on record to say that Joe Biden was the most pro-union president that he has seen. So it is perplexing. Perhaps it's an attempt to just curry favor and to be in a position so that regardless of how the election turns out, I mean, it is close, that you will be in a position perhaps to work with the incoming administration. But it seems like Teamsters themselves have rejected the position of their leadership in lots of different forums.
A bit of a divide there then. Bob, stay with us for a moment as we take a closer look at the state of labor unions in the United States. Public support for collective action peaked in the 1960s and membership began to decline. More workers have joined organized unions in recent years, in particular since the pandemic. But in the strong job market, that means a steady level of about 10% unionization. Yuka Royer has more.
Last year, Joe Biden made history as the first modern U.S. president to walk the picket line in support of striking auto workers in Detroit.
You deserve the significant raise you need and other benefits.
Strike culture appears to have returned to the American labor market as inflation hit workers' pockets. In 2023, Hollywood screenwriters and actors, Starbucks workers, nurses, hotel staff and pilots staged strikes before the United Auto Workers Union paralyzed car production in Detroit with a weeks-long stoppage affecting all of the big three car companies. The trend has continued this year. Boeing's machinists halted production of best-selling jets. Dock workers succeeded in getting a significant pay raise after a 3-day stoppage. Amazon drivers, more auto workers and journalists also walked off their jobs. The total number of workers involved in major strikes rose to nearly 460,000 in 2023, a 280% increase from the previous year, though still a fraction of the 1970s levels. However, despite the recent resurgence of collective action, American workers remain largely non-unionized. According to the government, union membership in the US peaked in the 1950s at over 1/3 of the workforce. Last year, that figure was down to 10%, but still a potentially significant chunk of American voters.
Bob Bruno, thank you for staying with us. There does seem to have been a spike in high-profile strikes in the U.S. over the past 2 years or so. Why is that?
Well, in part, the labor market just went through shock and trauma following the recession that was caused by the pandemic. And then there was this rapid reopening of the economy. We have never seen anything quite like that in the United States. It wasn't just in one sector, but it was across all industries. And there was an enormous demand for labor. And in that particular situation, power shifts to workers. And I think workers also realized during the pandemic just how badly treated they were. And how disposable employers thought they were. And therefore, when the market shifted in their favor, they also realized that through organizing, a collective voice would be the best way to really maximize their strength. So you saw an increase in unionization, but you also saw the ability structurally to strike. To hold out for greater demands. Obviously, inflation had really eroded the incomes of working class folks. And that really was following on 40 years of fairly stagnant or slow wage growth. So both the structural moment and I think the realization amongst workers, an increased kind of consciousness that only through collective action could they maximize their power, has led to this moment where we see these very, very high profile and always successful strikes, along with increased numbers of workers organizing, increased numbers of workers filing complaints with the federal government about management abuse, and workers winning more elections and winning more of the charges they bring against employers. So, and popularity, right? The public approval of unions is nearly, well, it hasn't been as high as it was in the 1960s. So it's at a very high level, and I think workers understand that very well and are exploiting the moment.
Would you say that unions and labor issues have taken a different, perhaps more prominent role in this year's campaign compared to other election cycles?
Labor is always an important constituency. It's obviously been the backbone of the Democratic Party, and the Republican Party has made a bit of a play for that labor vote really since Richard Nixon. So labor plays a prominent role regularly. And given the closeness of elections, given that we are having these elections decided by such small numbers in key states, and only a handful of key states, the density of union membership in places like Michigan or just Western Pennsylvania can be critically important to who wins. And so for all those reasons, I certainly think Harris has put working with organized labor and winning their vote at the forefront. And I think that even the Republican Party, understanding the pain, the angst, the feeling of being left behind that most working class folks have felt here in the United States, really creates an opening and an opportunity to try to peel off some of those union votes. So I think that vote really is important in this election in ways perhaps that it hadn't been in previous ones, but I think it's also consistent with organized labor being an important political institution during presidential elections.
Let me ask you very briefly about Joe Biden's legacy. He came into office promising to be the most pro-union president in modern history. Will he be remembered that way?
I think he will be. His record is really very consistent with the promises that he made, both in terms of appointments to the National Labor Relations Board, his stands on collective bargaining. You mentioned earlier in your piece walking a picket line. There also the three major pieces of legislation that invested in electric vehicles, renewable energies, creating more microchips, the large infrastructure bill. All of these bills really are very, very positive for working people, and they all have labor protections that are written into them. So he, I think, justifiably has earned that moniker as the most pro-union president in the modern era.
Bob Bruno from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
Well, that's all for now. Don't forget to look for People in Profit on the podcast platform of your choice, or as always, on the France 24 website. Until next time, thanks for watching.
In a forgotten time, she ruled with a fierce heart. Amwenima, beloved goddess, destined for eternal slumber. Is it a claw? Forgotten by time, she awakens in a new era, searching for her place in a world that has moved on. Amwenima's era. Rediscover the legend.
Child who will live long needs no charm. Nana Sase, the writer king who sips communion wine from the calabash, invites you to Mental Pictures 8, a colorful night of literary renditions and cultural expressions dubbed Bejina Reloaded, The Child Who Will Stay. Date 22nd November 2024. Venue La Palm Royal Beach Hotel. Time 6 p.m. Secure your seat with 100 Ghana cedis and experience this night of Ghanaian and African folklore embodied in poetry, dance, music, and your best imagination. Call 0244-924932 for tickets and all enquiries, or purchase your tickets on short code *365*88*539#. Sponsors: Ghana Export Promotion Authority.
Media partners: Channel 1 TV, Hits FM, Joy FM. Partner: Labari Beach Hotel.
This event is powered by Asase Inscription, Ghana's first literary coaching agency and cultural consultancy.
Our time in Kenya has been intriguing and very enlightening so far. In the next episode of Beyond Borders, Caleb has a hangout with some Ghanaian students in the United States International University. Hailing from various parts of Ghana and finding themselves in Nairobi, you can't wait to hear them share their thoughts on Kenya, food, transportation, and student life, etc.
Most of the Ghanaians here and even most West Africans here, we don't really like Kenyan food. I'm not saying Kenyan food is bad.
No, me too.
It's just it's just the preference, you see.
Watch Beyond Borders with Caleb Kuda on Wednesdays at 7 p.m.
In heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Daily bread, forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us, and deliver us from the snare of the foe. Glory, now and forevermore. as we forgive those who sin against us, and deliver us from the snare of the foe. Father, for thine is the kingdom, the power and glory, forevermore. Father, for thine is the kingdom, the power and glory, now and forevermore. Amen. Amen. Cara mia, il catalogo è questo, delle belle che io vuoi padron mio, un catalogo che ho fatto io. Osservate, leggete con me, osservate, leggete con me. In Italia 640, in Almania 231, 100 in Francia, Turchia, 91, ma in Spagna son già 1.300, 1.300. Offre queste contadine come re cittadine, ma contesse baronesse, marchesani, principesse, e d'ogni grado, d'ogni forma, d'ogni età, d'ogni forma, d'ogni età. In Italia 640, in Almania 231, 100 in Francia, in Turchia 91, ma in Spagna son già 1.300, 1.300. Va fra queste contadine come re cittadine, va contesse, baronesse, marchesani, principesse, e d'ogni grado, d'ogni forma, d'ogni età, d'ogni forma, d'ogni età, d'ogni forma, d'ogni età. Nella bionda eglia l'usanza di lodar la gentilezza nella bruna la costanza nella bianca la dolcezza. Vol di veno la grassota, vol di state la macrotta, e la grande maestosa, e la grande maestosa. La piccina, 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 Jan Jorvetsolza, Jan Jorvetsolza, Jan Jorvetsolza. Delle vecchie conquista del piacer t'impone lista sua passion predominante e la gioven principiante non si pica se sia ricca, se sia brutta, se sia bella, se sia ricca, brutta, se sia bella. Purché porti la gonnella, voi sapete quel che fa, voi sapete quel che fa, pur che porti la gonnella, voi sapete quel che fa, voi sapete. Voi sapete quel che fa, quel che fa, quel che va. Voi sapete quel che fa.
Subsea
What